Have you ever been playing Minecraft and just seen a block or an item or a creature and just thought, why is this in the game? What use does this have? Well, in Minecraft there's a lot of items that people call useless or, just features that, don't really have a purpose, but they're more for aesthetics or were items that were added but never got the update they needed to bring them alongside other updates. So in this video, we are going to be fixing several Minecraft features that I think are not necessarily useless, but need a bit more to bring them up to standard with some of the other features in Minecraft. So, the Fletching table. This was obviously added, I want to say back in the Village and Pillage update, along with a lot of the other like tool tables, and it was the same as like the smithing table, but the smithing table now has a use, whereas the Fletching table is still, it's pretty much a decorative block. You can use it to trade sticks and bows and arrows with villagers, and that's basically its only use. I saw online some people saying, oh, you should be able to use the Fletching table to make tipped arrows, you should be able to use the Fletching table to make, a quiver to hold arrows and stuff like this. And I thought what would be cool is being able to use the Fletching table to make new types of arrows. So what you can do, you get your pre-existing arrows and tip them. Not like the potion arrows, the tipped potion arrows, 'cause that works a little differently. My idea was being able to add iron, gold, or copper nuggets onto your arrow to give it a new kind of effect. So if you were to add an iron nugget onto your arrow on a smithing table, it now makes the heavy arrow. It will deal more damage, but it won't travel as far, and it'll take a lot longer to actually load the arrow onto the bow. You have to think, right, well, do I want an arrow that's going to do a lot more damage, but I'm going to have to be closer to the enemy, think about shooting him before I actually load the arrow, because this might take like twice as long. My kind of idea for this as well, it means that early game, if you're like, oh god, I don't have an enchanted bow, but I really want to use my bow to like fight against mobs, you can make some iron tipped arrows, some heavy arrows, and still deal a decent amount of damage to nearby mobs. And then in the late game, it makes it so the bow is actually really strong, because you can have power 4 or power 5 as well as an iron tipped arrow that deals more damage. And then the next one is the gold nugget. This one will make a fast arrow. I was going to call it the lightweight arrow, but gold isn't light. If anything, gold is heavier than iron. But I decided just to call it the fast arrow, and it's fast because of Minecraft magic. So the fast arrow essentially works the opposite to the heavy arrow. It loads onto the bow a lot faster, so it takes half the time for you to shoot the arrow, and it goes a lot further, but it deals like half the damage, doesn't deal as much damage. This can be useful if there's like a lot of monsters nearby and you want to quickly load arrows and fire them off, or if you're trying to quickly just deter another player. If you're doing PvP that's far away, you can use the fast arrows to shoot him from a distance and just keep unloading arrows onto him, keep up the pressure. And then the final arrow type is completely different to the other two, being the copper tipped arrow. Now for this one, my idea was to essentially make an arrow that explodes. Now hold up, I know what you're thinking, that sounds OP. But my idea was to make it so on impact, whether that be with a block of a player, the copper tip of the arrow actually like shatters and sends out little copper fragments, dealing damage to all nearby mobs. It won't be a lot of damage. I imagine it'll be like a quarter or a third of the damage a normal arrow does. It makes it useful if you're like surrounded by monsters and you want to deal a lot of damage to a lot of monsters at once. So you can just quickly shoot a copper arrow at them, and it deals kind of like a splash effect damage. Now, I don't know if I want to make this also work with potion effects, because I can imagine, for example, a heavy arrow that deals instant damage on the power bow would be insanely OP, Right, so moving on to the Sniffer. Now, I love the Sniffer when they first added it. I voted for it on the mob vote. I was like, yes, I want the Sniffer in the game. The Sniffer is so cool. I love it. But when it actually was like added to the game, is a bit like, what do you do? It just felt very like almost half-baked. Like they're like, oh, the Sniffer can dig up loads of cool new plants. There's like a prehistoric creature, and then added to the game, and it digs up 2 seeds And that's literally all it does. Other than that, it's just like a, I don't know, like a walking decorative block. So my idea for the Sniffer is to first of all buff the plants it already gives you. So the torch flower, you know, all it does at the moment, I think it glows a little bit. It gives off a little bit of light. My idea was just make it, first of all, give off the same light level as a torch. You know, it's called the torch flower. And then another idea was to make it give off like cool particles, similar to the, I can't remember the name, but the pink flower that sticks to the ceiling. That drops the green particles. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, make it give off particles, and you know, maybe give off like little red and yellowy orange particles, almost looking like embers from a campfire. I think that'd be really cool. Then for the picture pod, this one might be OP, but in my head I thought, well, it makes it so players want to get it. I thought make it so the picture pod works as an actual like harvesting plant, where if you go up to it maybe once every couple of Minecraft days with an empty potion bottle, you can interact with it, and that potion bottle becomes a bottle of XP. You know, like you makes it so there's an actual vanilla way of obtaining XP potions without finding them in loot chests. You can actually like create them from interacting with these picture pods. You know, if you like grinding out XP and you can't be, you know, bothered constantly going down into your mob farm, you could just get a Sniffer, hope to God it gives you a couple of picture plants, then every couple of days harvest the XP from the picture plants, and there you go. You can go and work on other projects while also gaining XP from your picture pod plants. And then I also thought, you know, just to finish off, maybe just give us another plant. There was one plant I think that was going to be added where it was like a blue flower, a blue vine that grew on walls. Just add it. Why not? Give us another decorative plant. Why was it removed? What's going on, Mojang? Another idea for a plant that I had was a pea shooter. If you ever play Plants vs Zombies, you know what I'm on about. Now, obviously, it's not going to be the pea shooter. My idea was a plant that the Sniffer gives you, that you plant and grow, and it essentially becomes a plant that shoots projectiles at incoming mobs. I just thought, you know, it's essentially a turret. You can now have a turret to defend your base from monsters while you're inside crafting and smelting your iron and gold that you got from your mining adventure. You know, it could be a great idea for some like mob farms and stuff like that. Obviously, you don't want to make it super strong. Literally, if they just made it do like half a heart of damage per shot, it'd just be a cool way of, if you set up a couple of them outside your house, like defending your base from monsters that are trying to get you.